Hi everyone and welcome to Life Creates Art. I am Shelly and I'm so excited about today. We're going to be talking about some acrylic techniques. We're going to have a lot of fun today and I've got it all set up and we're ready to go. So if you want to learn about more techniques, watch this. Hi everyone, Shelly again. So we are going to be learning about art techniques and I'm going to show you great examples of it, but I want to talk about technique for just a second. So having a good technique will help you develop your art and move ahead in your art. Simply because when you're sitting there and you're frustrated and you don't know where to go, having a little technique behind you, having these little tricks will help you to try new things. And I encourage you to try new things. And so I always want you to be, of course, discovering and moving ahead. So let's get to the brass tacks, because sometimes you need brass tacks and then you need the emotion. You need to put your life into your art. And to help you to put your life and your emotions and everything, to help it be a respite to you into your art, sometimes you need a little technique. And we're going to work on that. All right. Get started. Okay, guys, the first one I want to show you is a little dry brush technique where you do not use any water. So I've got a little blue here. My brush is completely dry, and I'm just going to use the paint as is. Just put it on my brush. And then, of course, dry brush. Now, this paint is a little bit thin, but you can use lots of different kinds of paints, ones that are a little more opaque and thicker, ones that you can't really see through. I'll show you that right now. All right, so now I want to show you a different color, just using a dry brush. There's no water added to this at all. It's a little bit thicker than normal. Okay, now the next technique I want to show you is wet brush. So I have the same paint as you can see here, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. I just dipped my brush in, and you can see already what's happening with this paint. You get a much thinner layer, lighter color, and you can go all the way down. You can even wet your brush a little more. You could spread that out some more, make it lighter and lighter as it goes down. It's a really nice technique. And the next one I want to show you is with a palette knife. So there's lots of different palette knives you can get. You can get these plastic ones. They come in little packages. These as well. I think this one I got at the Home Depot. And then, of course, the palette knife that I use quite a lot for smaller things, a little bit smaller. And so then you simply take your palette knife and you dip it in your paint like this, and then you spread it. I'm going to add another color here. You see how that blends really nicely? And that's palette knife. Okay, the next one I want to show you is something that's really fun to me, because you can get right in there with your paints. Just use your fingers. Super fun. I'm going to get in there, and we're just going to use our fingers to spread this around. This is a really, really fun way to work, you guys, because life can be so messy, and let your art just speak. Those two colors are not combining well, are they? Let's add some red in there. Just have some fun. Finger painting. We learned it in school. And see, this I can layer on top of. I can change those colors up. Just have some fun. Get messy. So for this next one, we're going to be talking about mixing paint. What I'm going to do here is, just to show you this, I'm going to take my white paint. I'm going to dip it on one side of my brush. And then I'm going to take the other paint. This is one way to, of course, mix paints when you're combining them directly onto the canvas. And you'll see that I've got two colors here, black and white, and then there's this shade of gray in the middle. And you can have some fun with that. And you see how it sort of makes a gray, but you've also got that distinctive white and the distinctive black. And then of course you can take your palette and mix a little black with a little white. Mix it right there on your palette and you'll have a nice shade of gray. Mixing paints. Next, I want to show you some layering. And with layering, I've sketched out a little face and a little flower here. A lot of layering is for shadows. And so I would come in first and lay in just where I want my shadows to lie. And it's really, really important for you to lay in some of these darker shadows before you start. And so I want some shadowing here around the nose and maybe right here on the tip. And then I'm going to come in on my flower and I'm going to do a darker blue here, right in the center. Oh, got a little water on there. That's all right. Going to do a little bit of a darker shade here, just by the center of the flower. And then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I let that dry for a minute and I've sort of created this flesh color that I'm going to layer in over the top of my darker shadows that I've done here. And you can kind of see them coming through here. And that allows you to really have a lot of contrast in your paintings and allow that darker shading to come through. You want to add, of course, a lot more than this. I would also add a little bit of red for the cheek. And then sort of come in there with more of that flesh and layer in that flesh over and sort of blend those two together. This also has to do with mixing colors to get that desired shade that you want. Probably let this dry a little bit and then come in with more shading. And of course, it's all about layering and having that real depth in your painting. You want depth in your painting. You don't want it to be a single note unless that's what you your painting style is. And now let's work on the flower a little bit. I've got the flower here that I've started, and I'm going to come in with, I'm going to actually use our wet brush style, and I'm going to come in with a little lavender on this, and I'm going to layer some lavender over that blue, and you can see how that blue sort of pops out of the lavender. So again, you just really want that depth in your art, whatever you are doing, whether it's watercolor or acrylics or oils. And of course you play with this a little bit, a little more wet blue coming in there. And that's what it's all about, is just creating depth. Now let's talk about underpainting. Underpainting is very much like layering, except underpainting, you can have a real distinct style with it. You can do this a lot with your palette knife work, but let's do this. I'm going to do a strip of red here. Maybe lay it across like that. I have a dry brush here that I'm doing this. I'm going to let that dry for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, so underpainting is dry, and just a little note, if you want your paints to dry a little bit faster, especially acrylics, just hit it with a little bit of a blow dryer, and that'll help it to dry faster. So what I'm going to do is, for my underpainting, I'm going to add a little bit of orange, but I'm going to use a wet brush. So you see that I'm combining my wet brush, a little more water. I want it to be thin and yet still be able to see the orange. So we're going to just do a little design here across that red. So you can still see the red. The red is very distinct, but you're making a cool design to where you can see the orange and you can see that red coming through. So like I said, underpainting is very much like layering, except when you want some very distinct looks. All right, so what I've done for detailing next is I've drawn a little leaf, I painted a little leaf and a little basic flower. I'm not good at flowers, so this was kind of a big leap for me. But I've got a sort of medium-sized brush and a very thin detail brush. I don't know if you can see that. But so I'm just going to add the little details to my flower. And the process I'm using now, we're going to talk about in just a little bit. It is actually called stippling. So I'm going to add some yellow to the center. And then, of course, I want to add a little more yellow highlights. This is just going in and adding some detail to your painting. Those final little touches that add so much. Add a little bit of highlight here on the end of the flower. And maybe bring some of this yellow in here. Now see, this is a perfect example of, that was kind of a bad idea, Shelly. So I'm going to come back in, I'm going to paint some lavender over it and see what I've got. Sometimes I end up, like I said before, with something even more beautiful than I had before. So let's see here. Now, this is just to show you some of the details you can add. You can add through the stippling. As you can see, I have done mixed paint mixing and a little bit of layering on this, and just to add some richness to this little flower, and maybe add a little bit of blue to this too. Oh, I've made green, of course. So I don't want to linger on this too long, but I just want to show you how you can add some details, and I'm going to come in. If you like, you can come in with different colors. You don't always have to use a black. Maybe add some detail to the center. And then, of course, come back and work on this. Again, adding some more depth to this. Go right down the center. This is just the details that you want to add. And take your time doing them. And again, like I did here, if you mess up a little bit, don't worry about it. Just keep going and keep working with it. I'm going to keep working with this. Detailing. Okay, next we're talking about dabbing, both dabbing with a brush and with a sponge. This is just a regular sponge, kitchen sponge. I've also got one that it's a little less porous. And so we're going to just work on that. I'm going to put a little bit of my red here on this, and we're going to start with this one, and you can just come in and create a really nice look with a sponge. Just keep working it. You can create the darker lines and the softer. Now I'm going to use the one that it's a little less porous. So I've got some blue on this. And again, you can see that the texture is a little more close together than the other one, but you can create some great looks. You can even combine, carry those over. You see how this works? I love that. Okay, now we're going to do some dabbing with a brush. What I like to do is when I do dabbing with my brush, I will set my brush in my paint. I get a little bit off. And then I'm just going to tap. Give a little more paint. And you see that great texture that it makes? You can use different paint brushes too, ones that are a little bigger. create some different looks. And that's dabbing with a paintbrush. All right, now we're going to work with dots, stippling. George Surratt did dots quite a lot in his work, and you can create, just with your small brush, little dots like this, and you can create thicker lines with them, and then go a little thinner. Need more paint. Separate the dots a little bit. And then add some different color dots to it to create some nice texture. You see how those blend? All right. Stippling with dots. Next, we're going to do color book style. I will sometimes, in my portraits, I will sometimes outline with black, as you saw me do in the detailing with that horrible flower that I did. But I will sometimes outline, and then I will go in. I'll wait for this to dry. Then I will go in and I will fill in. And the funny story here, I started doing this years and years ago when I was little. A friend of mine, Vivian, her brother had done a color to color book page, and he outlined everything so beautifully. And then everything on the inside was nice and light. And I've done all of my styles of paint like that ever since then. I just fell in love with it. So again, color book style. I'm going to paint this in just a second. Okay, color book style. So I'm going to incorporate some of the styles that I've shown here. I'm going to do some paint mixing, layering for his cheek. I'm going to fill this in a little bit of a red. This is very, very quick, trying not to take up too much time. But then again, I'm just going to color in the lines. And of course, a lot more detail is going to be added to this. A lot more layering. But you get the idea of color book style. Just gives you a nice, clean line to work with. I like to leave lines like this and work with those. So there you go, color book style. Okay, for scraping, I'm going to be using a palette knife, and I've combined a couple of different colors here, and I'm just going to lay it down like that. And then scraping is very basically either coming in with a palette knife or just the tip of your pencil. Adding some design like that. Scraping. Next is glazing, and of course my hands are covered in paint. Sorry about that. I have purchased the Liquitex Professionals Gloss Medium Varnish. Hopefully, it's kind of dark in here, guys. I'm so sorry. I will show this in a picture later. But the Gloss Medium Varnish, and there's lots of different kinds of varnishes and glosses and glazes that you can get to add to your paints. This is the one I've chosen to show you today. And I'm going to just add it to a little bit of my red. And what this is going to do to my red is it's going to give it a nice sheen. Glazes do sometimes change the color of your paint a little bit, depending on how much you add. But if you really want that nice, in this case, gloss, or they have matte, they have all different kinds of things. And it helps you see how it's smooth it is. It's very smooth, and then this is going to dry nice and shiny. And I love this look. Glazes. You can get them at Michael's in the paint section, and they're all different kinds. All right, so now I'm doing molding paste, and I've got the Golden Artist fiber paste, and I will show you a picture of it. Just taking a scoop of it with my palette knife, a nice big scoop, because I want it to be nice and some peaks and valleys if you want to make some nice peaks and have your paint be a little thicker. So I'm just going to combine this with my paint, and you can see how it really, really gives it a neat texture. And so if I want to apply my paint a little thicker, I can do that. And it'll actually keep these ridges. If you don't use the molding paint, it will not maintain those ripples, but this will because of the molding paste. All right, next is the spray bottle. This is something that I can't say I've ever seen people do that before, but I'm sure that they do. They use a spray bottle. I've combined in this spray bottle some paint, a little bit of water, and some alcohol because I just want it to be a little thinner. And I'm going to shake this and shake this and shake this, and I've covered the rest of my art using blue tape. And you just spray. And you see what a nice look it gives? So you can leave it as is, or you can kind of play around with it with a brush. But I love those drips and the flow that the spray bottle brings. All right, so last but certainly not least, we have the splatter. Now what I've done is I've wet a brush, and I'm going to take, let's do red. I'm going to take lots of red on my brush, add a little more water. Then I'm just going to basically toss my paintbrush. You can help it out too by doing a little flicking with your fingers. And you see that? Oh, I love that. I love doing splatters on my paintings. It gives such a nice look. And then if you combine those colors, oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And then of course with our spray bottle too, it's looking beautiful. So that is splatter. All right, folks, I hope you have enjoyed today and the acrylic techniques, and we'll have all of them, picture of this in the links below. Like and subscribe, and I hope you've learned something, and I have a lot of fun doing this. So I'll see you all next time, and next time I'm going to be telling my story. It's my birthday, so I'm looking forward to it and letting you know why I put my life into my art. So this is Shelly signing out, and I hope you have a really, really beautiful day. And remember to keep going and keep pressing on. Use these techniques and just keep learning and keep moving with everything that you can, and continue to take what's in your life, whether good or bad, and put it into your art. And it'll be a respite for you, I promise. And you'll be able to look back on it and remember. All right, you guys, love you. Bye. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Life. Oh, look. God. Okay.